Good afternoon, my name is Mayra Salazar. My topic is plasmodium falciparum mortality. Definition of the 4 species of malaria parasite, plasmodium falciparum is the most common cause of severe complications.
The parasite plasmodium falciparum is responsible for most of the world's malaria cases. It has evolved in concert with its human and mosquito hosts and displays a complex life cycle that alternates between the two. An infected female mosquito transfers the parasite to a human when she takes a blood meal. The parasite, in the form of sporozoites, is injected with her saliva, which contains an anticoagulant that promotes a steady blood flow. The circulatory system delivers the sporozoites to their target, the liver. A sporozoite enters a liver cell and begins to feed and grow. During the process, the parasite's nucleus divides many times, and then the nuclei bud off to produce thousands of new plasmodium cells, now in a form called merozoites. About a week later, the merozoites burst out of liver cells and enter the bloodstream. In the bloodstream, the merozoites infect red blood cells, where they again reproduce and burst out of the infected cells. The resulting merozoites can infect other red blood cells, yielding a cycle of infection and eruption. Malaria is characterized by repeated bouts of fever, each of which correlates with the synchronous release of merozoites from a population of red blood cells. Some of the infecting merozoites develop into sexual forms called gametocytes, which are either male or female. In the life cycle of plasmodium falciparum, gametocytes become large oval structures within red blood cells. The gametocytes do not harm the human host, but when a mosquito takes the gametocytes into its gut during a blood meal, these cells initiate the next stage of the plasmodium life cycle. In the mosquito's gut, the gametocytes escape from the red blood cells and develop into male and female sex cells called gametes. A male and a female gamete fuse to produce the first cell of the next generation, the zygote. The zygote matures into a motile cell called an oocyte and migrates to the wall of the mosquito's gut, where it develops into an oocyst. Inside the oocyst, cell division occurs to produce many new cells, again in the form of sporozoites. The oocyst ruptures and releases the sporozoites, which migrate to the salivary glands. From the salivary glands, the sporozoites can infect the next human host and repeat the plasmodium life cycle.
Application in medicine. Severe malaria is protective presenting symptoms. Are diverse and might occur singly or most often combined in the same patient. The World Health Organization has identified a case-defining condition 1 and the general principle for the management of severe malaria.
In this video, we're going to look at the treatment of malaria, basic pharmacology. So, of course, a vaccine would be optimal to prevent people from getting malaria, but developing a vaccine has a lot of difficulties, cost, and I guess the different strains of the plasmodium species, and I guess the ever-evolving mutations in the genetic material also plays a role. So, before getting into the treatment of malaria, let us again recap the life cycle, because treatment targets different stages of the parasite's life cycle. The parasites responsible for malaria are the plasmodium parasites. The plasmodium parasite is carried by a female Anopheles mosquito. The female Anopheles mosquito is infected with the parasite. The Anopheles mosquito carries the parasite in its salivary glands as sporozoites. The sporozoites is a form the parasite is in when it enters the human body. During feeding, the mosquito will expose the sporozoites to human circulation. The sporozoites will travel to the liver, where it will enter the hepatocytes. Within the hepatocytes, the sporozoites will replicate, mature into schizon, and finally, rupturing, releasing many merozoites, which is another form of the parasite. And these can be called the daughter parasites, which again have to mature. So the merozoites then enters the human circulation, the blood. But just going back to the sporozoites, the different plasmodium species, right, they have different abilities. And there are 4 or 5 main plasmodium species. So, for example, the Plasmodium ovale and vivax sporozoites they have the ability to remain dormant in the hepatocytes and form what's called a hypnozoite. And after many months or years, it will then replicate and then release its merozoites into circulation. So now let's go back to the merozoites which are in circulation. So the merozoites are bad, and they invade red blood cells. Within the red blood cells, it enters the ring. It will enter what's called the ring stage. It will then replicate to form a trophozoite and mature to become a schizont before rupturing, releasing again many merozoites. The cycle can then continue. So, you produce more merozoites, and yeah. Now, the rupturing of the red blood cells is responsible for anemia and malaria. The rupturing of the red blood cells are also coincidental with the clinical manifestations of malaria, which, as we know, are the fever, rigor, chills, tremors. Now, going back to the ring stage of the parasite's life cycle, which is in the blood cells, right? The parasite can also enter a sexual cycle where it can become a female or male gametocyte. When a new uninfected Anopheles mosquito then comes along for feeding, it can take in these gametocytes. The gametocytes will enter the mosquito's stomach. The Anopheles mosquito is now infected with the parasite. Now, in the stomach now of the mosquito, the male and female gametocytes, which have just been taken in, can form a zygote. The zygote will mature into a eukaryote, then be released by the stomach as an oocyte. The oocyte then matures and ruptures, releasing its content, which are the sporozoites. The sporozoites, as we know, will remain in the salivary glands until the infected mosquito will feed again. It will feed off humans again, and then this whole cycle can continue. The mosquito can feed on another human, another person that is healthy. And then if this person was infected, the person will obviously be unhealthy. Now, malaria is a big problem worldwide, particularly in developing countries. In Africa, many children under the age of 5 die to a malarian infection. Thus, it is a very important public health issue. Aside from prevention strategies, there is also treatment option which is prophylaxis prevention, or treatment when the symptoms arise. We will now look at the drugs, the pharmacology used for malaria, and their mode of action using this diagram we just
I hope
drew.
this will help.
I hope this will help.
So for anemia, serious anemia, blood transfusion can help to replenish the loss of blood. Now let us look at the big drug class known as quinolones. To understand quinolones, we have to understand how the plasmodium parasite survives in red blood cells. So here's red blood cell. And here is the parasite. The parasite has what's called a vacuole, which is important for basically nutrition, metabolism. Now the red blood cells contain many hemoglobins, right? The hemoglobins, as we know, are responsible for delivering oxygen to body tissues. The parasite within the red blood cell will use the hemoglobin. The hemoglobin is metabolized by the parasite in the parasite's vacuole. It will break the hemoglobin into heme and protein. The parasite will use the protein for some stuff, but it's the heme that is important here. What happens is that the parasite uses heme for energy. While metabolizing the heme, the parasite actually converts heme into hematin. Now, hematin is actually a dangerous chemical. So hematin is toxic to the parasite. So what the parasite does is that it converts hematin into a non-toxic form called hemozyme. So now, the drugs under quinolones, they actually target this conversion from hematin, which is toxic to the parasite, to hemozyme. So these quinolones I'm talking about are quinine, lumefantrine, chloroquine, and amdioquine. Now I hope I pronounced it right. These quinolones, these guys essentially inhibit hematin to become hemozyme. Thus, if hematin is not converted, it will be very toxic because hematin is toxic to the parasite, and the parasite dies. However, there is a particular strain of the parasite called the plasmodium falciparum, who has been able to develop resistance against chloroquine. What happens is that the parasite have been able to develop a pump. This pump pumps out the drug from the vacuole. So that the chloroquine has no effect, and the hematin can be successfully converted to hemozyme by the parasite. This resistance is known as chloroquine resistance. As the pump, it specifically removes the chloroquine drug. So those are the quinolones. Now, all these drugs are related in structure. The next antimalarial drug targets the mitochondria. Of the parasite.
Pros. Severe malaria may occur in areas of a very low transmission. Drug for malaria prevent to be infected. Cons. The enduring general principle is that when the intensity of transmission is higher, more persons are exposed to infection. Severe anemia occurs in infants in areas of stable intense transmission. Issue applied in Ecuador. Travelers can prevent the risk of malaria by taking medication like hydrochloroquine, chloroquine, or mefloquine, and using insect repellent in endemic areas like Amazon and the coast. Conclusion. They prevent medication and correct therapeutic might be a risk case for malaria learn more about the endemic areas before traveling. Thank you.